All right. Welcome to our deep dive into Think Like a CTO.
That's a good one.
Yeah, it's we've got some excerpts here, and honestly, this book is like a crash course in everything CTO.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it kind of gets into the real nitty-gritty
It does.
of what it takes to be successful in this role. And I think
Yeah.
whether you are considering becoming a CTO
Mm-hmm.
or whether you're a new CTO or you just want to understand how tech leadership really works, I think we're going to be able to unpack some really
Yeah.
juicy bits for you.
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot of good stuff in here.
Yeah.
Um, and one thing that stood out to me right off the bat is the book kind of acknowledges that,
Yeah.
the role of a CTO, it isn't always
It's not. Yeah.
like super well defined.
No, not at all. It's almost, you say,
It's
it's
kind of.
written in pencil, the job description.
It is, yeah.
And that actually can be used to your advantage if
Yeah.
you're smart about it.
So it's going to change like from company to company. It's going to depend on the size of the company.
Very much. Yeah.
And really kind of the maturity level of the company.
Exactly.
So, if you're at a startup, I mean, you're going to be super hands-on.
Yeah, absolutely. If you imagine yourself at a startup, you're probably coding,
Right.
building infrastructure.
Getting coffee.
You might be grabbing coffee. Exactly.
Right.
It's all about execution, rapid execution, and
Right. Yeah. Just getting stuff done.
just getting it done. Yeah.
But as a company grows, but I mean, that's going to evolve, right?
Yeah, very much so. So as the company starts to mature,
Mm-hmm.
the CTO's focus has to change with it.
Right.
You're going to be building teams.
Yes.
You're going to be managing teams, setting the technical direction, and thinking about scale.
Right.
Can the technology that we're building today, is it going to scale as the company grows?
Right. It's going from kind of being a player to a coach.
Yeah, that's a great analogy, yeah.
Right.
Moving from player to coach.
And then if you end up at kind of a well-established company,
Yeah,
that's a whole other ballgame.
that's a whole other thing, yeah.
Right, because now you've got these systems that have been built over years.
Over years, maybe decades.
Yeah.
And now you're responsible for maintaining stability, right?
Right.
Tackling the legacy issues that kind of bog things down.
The technical debt.
Exactly. Technical debt and just making sure that the technology supports the company's goals. So
Right.
it can be very different depending on.
And you may be inheriting other people's
Oh, absolutely.
technical debt
Yeah.
and, bad decisions.
Yeah, bad decisions. Yeah. And the book actually uses this phrase that I really like. It says the carpenter's lament is the one before you was an idiot and the one that comes next will think you were an idiot.
That's great. Yeah, that really paints a picture of what it's like
It does.
taking over from another CTO.
It really does.
So, if you're stepping into this role, where do you even start?
Yeah, where do you begin? Right.
Well, the book breaks down the first 100 days as a new CTO
Right.
into 3 very distinct phases, each one having a very specific purpose.
Okay, let's hear what's step 1.
Okay, so week 1, I love this. Week 1 is all about seeing the company through the client's eyes.
Through the client's eyes.
Through the client's eyes, it's about understanding the business from their perspective.
Right.
The products or services that are being offered.
Right.
How are the customers interacting with the technology?
Okay, so you're kind of stepping outside the tech bubble and looking at it from...
Stepping outside the tech bubble
Yeah.
and looking at it from the outside in.
Right, so you're understanding kind of the why behind the tech before you get into...
I love that. The why behind the tech. I love that.
Yeah.
Before you even think about how you're going to lead it
Right.
or manage it.
Exactly. So weeks 2 through 4.
Okay, so weeks 2 through 4, this is where you start to dive deep
Okay.
into the engineering department.
But the key here is you're not just looking at the tech.
Right.
You're also spending time getting to know all the other departments.
Oh, okay, so like marketing?
Marketing, sales, finance, everyone. Yeah.
Okay.
You're really looking at how they work, what their pain points are,
So you're getting a holistic view of the company.
a holistic view of the company and how technology interacts with
Right.
every aspect of the business.
Okay, that makes sense.
And this all leads into months 2 and 3, where you start digging into the legacy systems.
All right, so this is where you get in there and start fixing things.
Well, you might think so, but actually the book has this counterintuitive advice.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's, resist that urge to be the hero.
Right.
Come in and
Yeah, just jump in and...
just jump in and start fixing things.
Well-
Spend the time observing
Okay.
and understanding the existing systems, the team dynamics.
Right.
Why were things done a certain way?
Okay.
What were the constraints?
Yeah.
What are the potential risks?
Right.
before you start making any changes.
That makes sense. It's kind of like measure twice, cut once.
It is. It's the same principle.
Yeah.
You're taking the time to understand the context
Right.
so that you avoid making impulsive decisions that could really come back to bite you.
Okay, so you've kind of taken stock of what's going on.
Yeah.
You've avoided any major missteps, hopefully,
Hopefully.
in the first 100 days.
The fingers crossed.
So what's next? The book talks about how, a CTO needs to be more than just a techie.
Yeah, much more.
Yeah.
A CTO needs to be a leader
Well,
with a vision.
With a vision. So you're not just
Yeah.
coming in and just keeping the lights on.
No, absolutely not.
It's
Like
about
direction.
setting a direction, building that roadmap for the future of technology
Right.
within the company.
So how do you go about building a vision?
Well, the book lays out this really helpful framework,
Mhm.
and it starts with defining success
Right.
with measurable metrics.
So what does good look like?
Right. So not just like, we want to improve our website. It's like, we want to increase traffic by 20%.
Exactly.
Or whatever the metric is.
Make it tangible, make it measurable.
Right.
Right. And then you need to understand what your clients actually need.
So that's where that deep dive in those first few weeks really comes in handy.
Yeah,
Right.
it does.
You've already been talking to them. You've been listening to them.
You've been listening. You've spent the time understanding the business from their perspective.
Right.
Now you're listening to their feedback, their pain points, their aspirations.
So you're really figuring out the problems that they're trying to solve, not just like,
It's exactly.
the tech that you want to implement.
That's it, yeah. And then here's a step that might seem a little strange, but
Okay.
the book makes a really compelling case for it.
Okay.
You need to name your vision.
Name your vision, really.
Need your vision. Give it a catchy, memorable name that really captures its essence and it builds emotional investment.
Yeah, I could see how that would be helpful. It's like it's easier to rally people around, Project Phoenix than like,
Yeah.
Improving System Efficiency Initiative 3.0 or something.
Exactly. It makes it memorable. It makes it exciting.
Okay.
And finally, you identify the pillars of your vision.
The pillars.
The killers, think of these as like the core foundational elements
Okay.
that are going to guide your decisions and your actions.
So you're kind of taking this grand vision and breaking it down into these.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Concrete, actionable steps.
Yeah.
And here's a really practical tip. The book suggests that you create 2 regions of your vision.
Okay.
One technical, one business.
Okay.
Technical versions for your engineering team dives into the details of the tech,
Mm-hmm.
the architecture, the implementation. The business version, that's for everyone else,
Mhm.
focuses on the benefits. How is this going to improve efficiency?
Right.
How is this going to reduce costs?
Right. Yeah.
How is this going to create new opportunities?
Yeah. And the book actually has a really good example of this. They have a fictional company called Homax, I think.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, and they're modernizing their home management platform, and they have these 2 versions so that, everyone from the engineers
What?
to the executives to even the clients
Yeah.
can understand,
The what's and the why.
the what's and the why behind it.
Yeah.
So it's making sure that everybody's on the same page and working toward the same.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's about making the complex understandable and the technical relevant.
Right. Okay. So we've got a vision, but vision without a team is just a daydream.
Pretty much, yeah.
So let's talk about building a high-performing
Okay.
tech team.
Right, so one of the first things the book emphasizes is that not all resources are created equal.
Okay.
You got your full-time employees, of course, but then you've got contractors,
Right.
you've got vendors, and you've got the option of using onshore or offshore resources.
So it's kind of like choosing the right tool for the job.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, exactly. So, not every task requires a full-time employee.
Right.
Sometimes a contractor with specialized expertise is a better fit.
Right.
Or maybe outsourcing a specific function to a vendor is the most cost-effective way to go.
Right.
And choosing between onshore and offshore, that's a balancing act, right? You're
You know.
considering cost.
Right.
You're considering expertise.
Expertise, time zones.
Time zones, communication challenges.
Right. Yeah. A lot to think about there.
Yeah.
So how do you even know when it's time to actually hire somebody?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Right.
And the book actually provides some really actionable advice.
Right.
One of the things it says is identify the specific business events
Okay.
that trigger the need for new hires.
Okay.
So is it a new project that requires some very specific skills?
Okay.
Is it attrition within your team?
Right.
Is the current team just overloaded?
Right. So you're really trying to figure out the why behind the hire.
The why behind the hire, I love that.
Yeah.
Because it's going to help you define the role more clearly.
Right.
Attract the right candidates.
Right.
And once you know what you're looking for,
Mm-hmm.
the book suggests you develop something called a discipline matrix.
Okay, a discipline matrix.
Now, it might sound kind of intimidating, but
It does sound intimidating.
it's actually a really useful tool for assessing the skills and expertise within your team.
Okay.
And pinpointing any gaps.
So you're really taking a strategic look at what you have.
Very strategic, yeah.
And what you need.
Exactly. So instead of just saying, we need another Java developer,
Right.
you're looking at, okay, what specific skills and experience do we need for this particular role?
Okay, that makes sense.
Where are we potentially lacking?
And then you write job descriptions that
You got it, yeah.
target those things.
Targeted job descriptions.
And the book talks about how, you should really go beyond those generic templates.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
That you see everywhere.
Right, descriptions that are compelling, that highlight the company culture.
Right.
That really capture the essence of the role.
Okay.
Think of it as a marketing piece.
Right.
You're trying to attract talent.
Yeah, you're selling the job.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, all right. So you've got the job description, you've got a stack of resumes.
Yeah.
What about the interview process?
Okay, so one thing that really stood out to me was the emphasis on creating a positive candidate experience,
Okay.
even for those who aren't ultimately selected.
Right, that makes sense. I mean, it's kind of like,
Yeah.
it's good for your employer branding.
It is, yeah, people talk.
People talk.
Word gets around, yeah.
So, I mean, it's good business.
Good business.
As well as just being the right thing to do.
Exactly.
So what are some good tips for the interview process?
Well, the book really positions the interview as more than just a technical quiz,
Okay.
right? You're not
grilling them on
you're not just grilling them. No.
trivia questions.
Yeah, you're trying to assess how they think,
Right.
problem-solving skills,
Right.
how do they handle stress,
Okay.
communication skills,
Mhm.
are they going to be a good fit for the team culture?
Right. You want to make sure that they're going to not only do the job, but thrive
Exactly.
in the environment.
Thrive in the environment, yeah.
So it's really, the interview is really a two-way street.
Very much so.
Right. It's for them to evaluate you and vice versa.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Now, before we move on, I want to touch on something that's, not the most glamorous topic, but it's super important, these essential kind of housekeeping.
Yeah, the stuff that nobody wants to talk about,
Right.
but is super critical.
Yeah, that keeps things running smoothly.
Yeah. And the book gets into some of the nuts and bolts of keeping things running smoothly.
All right. So what are some examples of things that fall into this category?
So think about hardware management.
Okay.
Do you have a clear inventory of all the hardware in the company?
Right.
Are you scheduling preventative maintenance
Okay.
to avoid that costly downtime?
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand the lifespan of various components?
Okay.
So you can plan for replacements.
Right. So being proactive.
Be proactive, anticipate the problems before they arise.
Right.
And speaking of being proactive, support contracts.
Support contracts.
They're like insurance policies
wrong with
for
it.
your critical systems.
You hope you never have to use them, but
You hope you never have to use them.
when you do,
But when you do,
they're a lifesaver.
they're a lifesaver, exactly. And then there's monitoring.
Okay.
Now, this is where you're implementing both external and internal monitoring.
Okay.
External monitoring is looking at things from the client's perspective. Okay.
Are websites loading quickly?
Good. Okay.
Are services functioning properly?
Okay.
Internal monitoring
Right.
is looking at the performance of your systems.
Okay.
Are the servers running at optimal capacity?
Right.
Are there any bottlenecks, potential points of failure?
Right. Okay. So you're keeping an eye on everything from
Everything.
the inside and the outside.
Inside out, outside in.
And then there's backups.
Backups and restoration.
Backups and restoration.
This is, backing up the right things at the right time.
Right. And making sure that your
Yeah.
restorations actually work.
That they actually work. That's key.
Yeah. Because it's one thing to back stuff up. It's another to
Yeah.
know that you can get it back
You can actually restore it
when you need it.
when you need it.
Yeah.
Okay. And one final tip
Yeah.
from this section, review your budget
Regularly.
regularly.
Whether it's weekly or monthly, whatever works for you.
Okay.
Stay on top of your spending.
Okay.
Avoid surprises.
Avoid surprises. Yeah.
Make sure you're staying within your
Stay within budget.
allocated resources.
All right. So we've covered a lot of ground already.
We have.
We've talked about, the kind of the changing nature of the CTO role,
Yeah.
building a vision, assembling a team, even these kind of essential housekeeping
The
tasks.
unglamorous but important stuff.
Right, exactly. That keeps everything
Running smoothly.
running smoothly. But
Yeah.
there's so much more to explore.
Oh, there's a lot more.
So stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive,
Absolutely.
where we're going to get into security challenges, the importance of documentation, and some of the more strategic aspects
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
of being a CTO.
Me too.
All right, welcome back to our deep dive into Think Like a CTO. In the first part, we talked about, vision, building a team, and some of those everyday tasks that keep things running smoothly.
Yeah, the nuts and bolts.
Yeah, and now we're going to kind of shift gears and look at some of the more strategic
Yeah, the more strategic.
elements of the role.
Absolutely.
And I guess one of the most important things is building and maintaining that high-performing
Yes.
tech team.
Absolutely. And that starts with performance management.
Performance management, yeah. I mean, that can be kind of a touchy subject.
Yeah, well, we're not just talking about, those dreaded annual reviews that nobody likes.
Right.
The book actually has a really interesting take
Okay.
on how to make performance reviews
Mm.
more meaningful and less stressful for everyone involved.
I think we can all relate to that.
I think we can, yeah.
So tell me more. How do you make them less stressful?
Well, one of the keys is to build a competency matrix.
A competency matrix.
Competency matrix.
What is a competency matrix? I'm glad you asked, because this is really cool. What it does is it takes the guesswork out of performance evaluations.
Okay.
So you're not just relying on these vague impressions
Yes.
or subjective opinions.
You're actually assessing performance against these very specific measurable criteria.
Okay, I like it. I like it. So
Yeah.
what does it look like?
What does it look like? It's actually pretty straightforward.
Okay.
You start by identifying the core competencies for each role on your team.
Right.
So let's take a software developer, for example.
Okay.
A core competency might be something like problem solving.
Okay, problem solving. So then you break that down into like,
You got it. Break it down
okay,
into these very specific observable behaviors.
observable behaviors.
Yeah. So what does good problem solving actually look like?
Okay.
So for a software developer, it might be, being able to debug complex code,
Oh, okay.
identifying the root causes of issues,
All right.
and then proposing effective solutions.
So you're not just saying like, be good at problem solving.
No.
You're giving very concrete
Concrete example.
examples of what that looks like.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
You then align this competency matrix
Okay.
with your company's overall goals
Okay.
and values.
Okay.
So that way you're ensuring that individual performance is directly contributing to the success of the team.
Right. So you're connecting the dots between the individual,
Connecting the dots.
the bigger picture.
I love it.
So, and the best part is you can use this competency matrix for so much more than
So much
just
more, yeah.
the annual review.
You can use it for ongoing feedback, for
Yeah.
professional development planning, and even for recruitment.
Right. Okay. So it becomes this tool for really managing talent,
Absolutely.
creating a culture of improvement.
I love it.
Now, even with the best team in the world,
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to have some challenges.
You're going to have to deal with underperforming team members.
Right. That's never fun.
No, never fun, but it's part of the job.
It is, yeah. And
Yeah.
the book gives some advice on how to handle this
Yes, it does.
effectively.
It-
So what's the first step?
Well, the first step is always to identify the root cause of the underperformance.
Okay.
Is it a lack of skills?
Okay.
A lack of motivation?
Right.
Maybe the person is just not a good fit for the role.
Right. So you got to kind of figure out the why
You got to figure out the why.
before you can address the what.
Exactly. And once you understand the why,
Mm-hmm.
then you can develop a plan
Okay.
to address the issue.
Right.
This might involve providing additional training,
Okay.
setting clearer expectations, or having a difficult conversation about maybe a potential change in roles.
Right. So you're really trying to find a solution that works for both the individual and the company.
Exactly. And one thing the book really emphasizes is document everything.
Document, really.
Document everything, document the performance issues,
Okay.
the conversations, the steps you're taking to address the underperformance.
Okay, so this is kind of
Well, it's protecting the company. It protects the company
And the employee?
and the employee, and it just creates a very clear record of what happened.
Okay, so it's about transparency
Transparency.
and having that paper trail.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, sometimes, I mean, despite your best efforts,
Yeah.
termination is
It happens. It happens. And the book offers a framework for handling these situations, really emphasizing the importance of following legal guidelines,
right,
treating the employee with respect,
right,
providing support during the transition.
right. So it's really doing what's best for the company while trying to minimize
the negative impact.
the negative impact on the person.
Exactly, exactly. And it's also important to remember the impact on the rest of the team.
Oh, right, right.
So make sure that you're maintaining a positive and supportive work environment for everyone.
Even in those tough situations.
And in those tough situations.
Okay, now I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about something that's become increasingly common, which is remote work.
Yeah, the book actually has some really valuable insights into managing remote teams effectively.
Okay, yeah, because that's a whole,
It's a whole other...
it's a whole other ballgame.
It is. It is. And one of the most important things is establishing very clear communication channels and protocols.
Okay, so everybody knows how to get in touch,
How to get in touch.
what the expectations are,
I think expectations are...
response times and things like that.
Yeah, communication tools, meeting schedules,
Right.
expected response times.
Okay, so everybody's on the same page.
Everybody's on the same page, and the book also stresses the importance of regular check-ins and virtual team building activities.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you can't grab coffee together in the break room,
Yeah,
but
right.
you can still find ways to connect with your team members
Right.
on a personal level and foster that sense of camaraderie.
Right, even when you're not physically in the same place.
Even when you're not physically in the same space, yeah. And maybe the most important thing is that managing remote teams requires a really high level of trust.
Trust, yeah.
And flexibility.
You
got to trust that people are going to get the job done even when you can't see them.
Right, so it's finding that balance between, accountability and autonomy.
Accountability and autonomy. That's a great way to put it.
Now, speaking of challenges, decision-making.
Yes.
I mean, as a CTO, you're constantly faced with these complex decisions.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to technology.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, build versus buy.
Build versus buy, that's a classic.
Right. Do we try to build it ourselves? Do we buy an off-the-shelf solution?
Yeah, and the book actually provides a framework for making this decision. And it all starts with a concept that I think is absolutely crucial for any CTO to understand.
Okay.
And that's avoiding vendor lock-in.
Okay, vendor lock-in. Tell me more about that.
So vendor lock-in is when you become so reliant on a particular vendor's products or services that it's either difficult or incredibly expensive to switch to a different solution.
So you're essentially trapped.
You're trapped, yeah.
Okay. That sounds bad. How do you avoid that trap?
So the book has some practical strategies.
Okay.
Whenever possible, choose open standards.
Good.
Design your systems with these modular architectures that allow you to swap out components without having to rebuild everything from scratch.
Okay.
And when you're negotiating contracts, make sure you have flexibility and very clear exit options.
So you're really thinking long-term.
Thinking long-term.
And being strategic about those technology decisions.
Yeah.
So going back to build versus buy, what are some of the factors to consider?
So some of the key factors, cost obviously is a big one.
Right. Yeah. How much is this going to cost?
But you also have to think about time to market.
Okay.
How quickly do we need this solution?
Okay.
Do we have the in-house expertise to build it ourselves?
Right.
And how important is customization?
Okay, so it's really weighing all those pros and cons and making it a decision.
Weighing the pros and cons.
That aligns with your needs and your
needs and your resources.
And your resources, right. And it doesn't always have to be an all or nothing thing.
It doesn't, no.
Right, you could buy a platform and then kind of build on top of it.
You could buy a core platform.
Right.
And build custom integrations.
Right. Exactly.
Or extensions to meet very specific requirements.
Okay, so you're kind of getting the best of both worlds.
You are.
Now, another big decision that CTOs are often faced with is, cloud versus
Cloud versus on-premise.
On-premises.
Yeah.
Cloud or no cloud. Right.
Cloud or no cloud, that's the question.
That is the question.
And the book really explores both sides,
Yep.
the advantages and disadvantages of each.
Okay.
Cloud computing has become incredibly popular.
Right.
For good reason. Right.
Yeah.
It offers flexibility, scalability, and that pay-as-you-go pricing.
Right.
But on-premises still has its place.
Right.
Especially for companies that have...
Yeah, that have very specific security
or compliance requirements.
Compliance requirements, yeah.
Yeah, so it really comes down to understanding your needs and your risk tolerance.
And there's different flavors of cloud, too,
Well,
right?
absolutely. You got public cloud, you got private cloud, you got hybrid cloud.
Right.
So it's not just a simple yes or no.
It's a lot more complicated than that.
It's a lot more nuanced, yeah.
Now, speaking of risk, let's talk about disaster recovery.
Oh, okay, yeah. Nobody wants to think about it.
No, nobody wants to think about it, but
it's critical.
It's critical
to have a plan.
Right, you got to be prepared.
Be prepared, yeah.
And so the book really stresses the importance of having this
a robust disaster recovery plan.
Robust,
yeah, that covers all sorts of potential disruptions.
Natural disasters,
cyber attacks, hardware failures, you name it.
Power outages,
yeah.
Anything that could potentially
disrupt
the business. You got to have a plan.
So it's about ensuring business continuity. And minimizing
downtime.
That downtime.
Yeah. And the book explores all sorts of different strategies.
Okay.
From having a geographically diverse backup site to using cloud-based backup and recovery services.
Right. So there's lots of different ways
to
skin that cat.
Yeah. And the key takeaway for me is that you got to test your disaster recovery plan. You got to test it, right? Because
you got to test
what good is it if it doesn't actually work? Right.
Exactly. And don't forget the human element of this too.
Oh, right.
So it's not just about the technology, it's about communication. It's having clear protocols for notifying stakeholders, coordinating those recovery efforts, keeping clients informed.
Right. Yeah. So it's really about being prepared for the worst.
Hoping for the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I want to touch on something that I think is incredibly valuable but often overlooked, and that's
data.
Data. Right. What's so special about data?
Well, data is the lifeblood of any modern company. It's what drives insights, decisions, innovation. But it can also be a liability if it's not managed effectively.
Okay, so how do you effectively manage data?
So the book offers a framework that starts with understanding the different types of data that your company generates and how it's used.
Right. So you got
operational data. Customer data. Financial data.
Right.
All sorts of data flowing through your system.
Yeah, it's a lot to keep track of.
It can be.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important to categorize your data into these different buckets, each with its own set of rules for ownership, retention, security. So, for example, operational data might only have a very short retention period.
Right.
Because it's really only relevant for a short time.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
But customer data, on the other hand, might require much stricter security measures.
And a longer retention period.
Because it's sensitive information.
Right. Okay, so you're treating different types of data
differently.
Based on their value and their
value, their sensitivity. And it's also crucial to stay on top of data compliance.
Right.
Make sure you're adhering to all the relevant regulations and industry standards for data privacy and security.
Right. So it's not just about managing it.
It's not just
efficiently, it's about managing it.
Ethically and responsibly. Absolutely.
Okay, now let's talk about something a little more technical.
Okay.
Microservices.
Microservices, yeah.
I mean, I've heard that term thrown around.
It's a popular term.
But I don't really know what.
It can seem kind of intimidating, but the concept is actually pretty simple.
Okay.
It's really just a way of breaking down large, complex applications into these smaller, independently deployable services that communicate with each other through APIs.
So instead of having this one
big monolith,
giant monolith, you have these little interconnected
pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this offers a lot of advantages, especially for companies that are trying to build very scalable and resilient applications.
Okay, so what kind of advantages are we talking about?
So one of the big advantages is that you can develop and deploy different parts of the application independently, which can really speed up your development cycles. Makes it easier to make changes and updates. And because these services are independent, if one service fails, it doesn't bring the whole application down.
Right, so it's more resilient.
More resilient, exactly.
But there's got to be some downsides, right?
We're always trade-offs. Right. I mean, managing a microservices architecture can be more complex than managing
that big monolith.
Yeah. Testing and monitoring can also be more challenging. But for a lot of companies, the benefits of that flexibility, that scalability, that resilience really outweigh the added complexity.
Right. Okay. So it's a trade-off.
It's a trade-off, like most things in technology.
Like most things in technology. All right. Now let's talk about something that's become incredibly important in software development, and that's open source.
Open source software.
Yeah.
So open source software, it's basically software that's freely available for anyone to use, modify, and distribute. It's created and maintained by a community of developers. And it's become really a vital resource for companies of all sizes.
So what are some of the advantages of using open source?
So some of the big advantages, for starters, it can save you a lot of money. You're not paying licensing fees for commercial software. And because it's developed by a community, you often have access to a huge pool of expertise and support.
Oh, that's good. So, I mean, it sounds like a win-win, but
it can be.
Are there any risks?
There are a few things to be aware of. The most important is understanding the different types of licenses. So some licenses are very permissive. They let you do pretty much anything you want with the software. Others have restrictions, like they might require you to make any modifications that you make publicly available.
So you got to do your homework.
And
make sure that you're using it in a way that
complies with the license.
Right?
Yeah. It's a good idea to have very clear guidelines within your company about how open source should be used. Make sure your developers understand the licensing implications, the importance of using open source responsibly and ethically.
That makes sense. Now let's talk about something that's near and dear to every developer's heart.
I think I know where you're going with this.
Choosing a programming language.
Programming language, right?
Yeah.
There are so many out there.
The language wars? Yeah, it really can feel like that sometimes.
It can.
I mean, how do you even begin to...
It's a tough one.
Make a decision.
So the book actually offers a framework that focuses on a few key factors.
All right, let's hear it.
So first, consider the popularity of the language.
Popularity.
Yeah, how widely is it used?
Right, yeah. I mean, you don't want to choose some obscure language that nobody knows.
That nobody can support.
Exactly.
So then look at the ecosystem around the language. Are there a lot of libraries and tools available? Is there a strong community of developers who can offer support?
Right. So it's not just about the language itself.
No.
It's about the whole
ecosystem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then you need to think about performance. Right. Some languages are faster than others.
Right.
Some are better suited for specific tasks like data analysis or web development.
Right. You wouldn't use a hammer to drive in a screw.
Exactly. You wouldn't use a hammer to drive in a screw.
Right.
And finally, and maybe most importantly, think about the suitability of the language for the specific task at hand.
So choosing the right tool for the job.
Choosing the right tool for the job. And remember, it's not always just about the technical factors. You also need to consider the availability of skilled developers.
Right. Can you actually find people who can write this code?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the long-term maintainability of the code base.
Right. You don't want to choose something that's going to be obsolete in 2 years.
Exactly. And speaking of older systems,
the
book also addresses the challenges of dealing with legacy languages.
Right. The languages that are,
that are no longer actively developed.
No longer supported.
Supported, yeah. So it offers some strategies for migrating away from those legacy languages.
without disrupting the business.
Right. That's important.
It's about finding that balance between the need for modernization and the need for stability.
Right. So you don't want to just rip and replace.
You don't just want to rip and replace
everything, right?
No.
You got to be strategic.
Strategic about it.
Okay, now let's shift gears again, talk about software development.
Processes.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds exciting.
Well, maybe not exciting, but definitely important.
Okay.
So the book gives a really thorough overview of the entire software development life cycle.
Okay.
From project planning to coding standards
to testing
to deployment.
Yeah.
It's about establishing a clear and repeatable process for building high-quality software.
Right.
And it all starts with project planning.
Okay.
Emphasizing the importance of defining clear goals.
Okay.
Breaking down projects into these smaller, manageable tasks.
Right.
And using agile methodologies. Agile, right? Agile is about being...
Agile is all about being flexible.
Flexible and responsive.
Responsive, right, and adapting to changing needs.
Adapting to those changing requirements. And it highlights the importance of having a skilled project manager.
Right. So you need somebody to kind of...
You need somebody to steer the ship.
Steer the ship, keep everybody
moving in the right direction.
Yeah, moving in the right direction. And then the book talks about coding standards.
Coding standards.
Which, I mean, that might seem like kind of a minor detail.
It might. But it's actually crucial.
It's important, right?
It's crucial.
For ensuring code readability.
Readability, maintainability. Collaboration among developers.
All right, so everybody's on the same page.
Everybody's on the same page.
As far as
formatting, naming conventions. Documentation.
Yeah, all that good stuff.
Yeah, it's about establishing that shared language.
Right.
And ensuring code quality. Okay, and what about version control?
Version control, absolutely essential.
Essential, okay.
Absolutely essential. Allows you to track changes to the code.
Okay.
Collaborate with other developers.
Right.
Revert back to previous versions.
Right. So it's like an undo button for your...
It is. It's like an undo button.
Your entire base.
For your code base, yeah. And the book explains, different systems like Git.
Right.
And provides some practical tips for using it effectively.
Okay. And then, of course, there's testing.
Testing. Crucial. Absolutely crucial for ensuring code quality.
Right.
Catching bugs early.
Right.
Preventing those regressions.
Okay. And the book talks about, different
types of testing.
Types of testing, right?
Unit testing, integration testing, end-to-end testing.
Right. And the importance of
automation.
Automating those tests.
Automating the testing, yeah.
So you're not, manually...
Not doing everything manually.
Guessing everything, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and then finally there's deployment.
Deployment, yeah. So highlight the importance of having a streamlined, automated deployment process.
Right, so you're not just
throwing code over the wall.
Throwing it over the wall and hoping for the best.
Hoping for the best? No.
Right.
The book explains different strategies like blue-green deployments.
Okay.
Canary deployments.
Okay.
Which are all about minimizing risk.
Right.
And ensuring that smooth transition.
Yeah.
When you're deploying new code.
Okay. Now, I want to talk about something that's, I think, really important, but often overlooked, and that's technical debt.
Technical debt. The silent killer.
The silent killer.
Of software projects.
I've heard it called that. So what exactly is it?
So it's basically the cost of shortcuts taken during software development.
Okay.
So maybe you rush to meet a deadline and you don't write the cleanest code.
Okay.
Or maybe you opt for a quick fix instead of really addressing the root cause.
So you're kicking the can down the road.
You're kicking the can down the road.
Yeah.
And it's like taking out a loan that you have to pay back later with interest.
With interest, okay.
Yeah. And just like financial debt, technical debt can really accumulate and become a burden.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Slow down development cycle.
Right. Expert. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into Think Like a CTO. We've covered a lot of ground, from kind of the technical stuff to those more strategic decisions.
Yeah, the nuts and bolts, the strategy.
Yeah, exactly. And now we're gonna kind of explore something that I think is really important, but often gets overlooked.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the human side.
The human side of being a CTO.
Of being a CTO, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we often think of CTOs as these brilliant technical minds.
Right.
But they're also
They're human beings.
Human beings,
Yeah.
right, with their own, strengths and weaknesses and challenges, and the book does a really good job of kind of acknowledging that.
It does. It does. I was pleasantly surprised by that, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think it does a fantastic job of acknowledging that human element of the role.
Yeah. So where should we start?
Well, let's talk about something that nobody enjoys, but everybody has to deal with at some point, and that's office politics.
Ugh, office politics. Yeah, that sounds
It can be exhausting.
Yeah. and messy.
It can be, yeah. And the book actually gives a really insightful definition of office politics that I thought was worth sharing.
Okay.
It says, office politics is the absence of data that is replaced by emotion.
Wow. Yeah.
So when logic and reason take a backseat to, personal agendas and emotional reactions.
That's when things get messy.
Yeah, and the book offers some practical advice for navigating these sometimes treacherous waters.
Okay.
So it's about understanding the key players and their motivations.
Building alliances with influential people.
Okay.
Choosing your battles wisely.
Right.
And documenting everything.
Why is that so important?
Well, it creates a record of what happened,
right?
Which can be really valuable if you're ever in a situation where you need to defend your actions or decisions.
So it's kind of protecting yourself.
In a way, yes, but it's also about
transparency
and accountability.
And sometimes the best way to win is to just not play the game at all.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. Just
not every fight is worth fighting.
Not every fight is worth fighting. Okay, now let's talk about something that's really important for anybody in a leadership position, especially a, high pressure role like a CTO, managing stress.
Yeah, so the book has a lot of great advice on this.
Okay.
How to stay calm under pressure.
Right.
Maintain perspective.
Yeah.
Avoid burnout.
Right. I mean, it's a tough job.
It is a tough job.
Yeah. And it all starts with recognizing your own personal stress triggers.
Okay, stress triggers. What are those?
So these are the situations or events that tend to push your buttons and send your stress levels, soaring.
Right. Okay.
So, it could be a looming deadline. It could be a difficult conversation.
Right.
It could be just that feeling of being overwhelmed.
Right. Okay. So once you kind of figure out what those are, what do you do about it?
So the book suggests that you develop coping strategies.
Okay.
So this might be, taking a break.
Okay.
Practicing mindfulness.
Yeah.
Going for a walk.
Right.
Listening to music. Talking to a trusted colleague.
So it's about finding what works for you.
Absolutely.
And having that
toolkit.
Yeah, that toolkit of strategies.
Those strategies, yeah.
And I think, one of the most important things I think is setting boundaries.
Setting boundaries, yeah.
Right, both at work and at home.
At work and at home.
Because it's so easy, I think, in the tech world to be
always on.
Always on, right?
Yeah.
And you've got to protect yourself.
Protect yourself, protect your time, your energy.
Energy.
Make sure you have space to recharge and de-stress.
And it's okay to ask for help.
It's okay to ask for help.
Right.
Absolutely.
Whether it's, delegating tasks or seeking advice from a mentor or talking to a therapist.
Yeah, there are resources available to support you.
There's no shame in that.
No shame in asking for help.
Okay, now let's shift gears a little bit and talk about, I guess, one of the more rewarding aspects of being a CTO, and that's building relationships.
Building relationships.
Right. And you might not think of that as
You might not.
Being a top priority.
Yeah, it's not the first thing that comes to mind.
For a CTO, but
it is important.
The book really stresses that it's crucial.
It is.
For success.
It is.
So why is that?
Well, for starters, it just creates a more positive and productive work environment when people feel valued and respected. They're going to be more engaged, more motivated. It makes it easier to collaborate, to work together effectively.
So how do you go about building these strong relationships?
So the book gives some really practical advice.
Right.
One of the most important things is just to schedule those regular one-on-one meetings with your direct reports. Check in, provide feedback, offer support, get to know them on a personal level.
So it's not just about talking about work. It's
not just about the work. It's about
building that
connection.
Yeah, that connection.
Yeah, personal connection.
And don't forget to, recognize
and celebrate.
Celebrate achievements.
Yeah. Celebrate wins.
Both big and small. Right.
Big and small.
It's creating that culture of
It's about appreciation.
Appreciation.
Yeah. And just making people feel valued.
Right. And it takes...
It takes time.
And effort.
And effort, right.
It does.
It's not something that just happens overnight.
No, you have to be present. You have to listen attentively.
Right.
You have to show genuine interest in the people that you work with.
It's about being human.
It is. It is. It's about being human.
Okay, so one of the biggest challenges for any CTO is just staying ahead of the curve.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Things are changing so quickly.
Rapidly changing.
In the tech world.
It's a fast-moving industry.
How do you even keep up?
Well, the book offers some great advice on how to stay current.
Okay.
And it all starts with making time for learning.
Okay. So you're not just relying on what
you learned in school.
Learned in school, yeah.
Yeah, you got to be constantly seeking out new knowledge.
Right. So you're reading industry publications. You got it.
You're attending conferences.
Taking online courses.
Right. So you're a lifelong learner.
You're a lifelong learner, and don't underestimate the power of networking.
Networking, right.
Yeah. Connect with other tech leaders.
What?
Share knowledge. Learn from each other's experience.
That's right. So it's building that community.
Building a community of support.
Right. And one final topic I want to highlight from the book is succession planning.
Succession planning, interesting one.
Yeah, and again, you might not think that would be, a top priority for somebody who's just...
Especially early on in your career.
Yeah, early on, right? But the book makes a case for why it's important.
It does.
No matter where you are in your career.
Yeah, it's about thinking long-term.
Right.
Developing your team.
Okay. Preparing
for the future, even if that future doesn't include you.
So it's about creating a legacy.
It is. In a way, it is about creating a legacy. It forces you to think about, what do you want to leave behind? Right. What are the skills and knowledge that need to be passed on? What are the systems and processes that need to be in place to ensure that smooth transition?
So you're setting your team up.
You're setting your team up for success.
For success, yeah. Even after
you're gone.
You've moved on.
Exactly.
Okay, well, that brings us to the end.
It does.
Of our deep dive into Think Like a CTO. And honestly, I have to say, this book has been...
a real eye-opener.
Yeah, real eye-opener. It's packed with practical advice and insights that can help.
It can help any CTO, yeah.
Yeah.
At any stage of their career.
At any stage of their career, we've really explored, this multifaceted role, the challenges, the rewards, the importance of, not just technical expertise, but leadership.
Yeah, the soft skills.
The emotional intelligence. And just this commitment to... Continuous learning.
Yeah.
Right. So we encourage you to check out Think Like a CTO.
Absolutely.
For yourself. And remember, being a CTO is a journey.
It is.
Not a destination.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Embrace the challenges, learn from your experiences.
And never stop growing.
All right. Until next time.
Keep diving deep.
And keep thinking like a CTO.
Absolutely.